Persia, one of the largest empires in the ancient world, it stretched from western India all the way to Europe and even controlled the Greek-inhabited lands of Ionia. Their expansion had been unstoppable, their armies unbeatable, and they were ruled by kings that were viewed as gods among men. In 499 BC, a tyrannical leader of one of the 12 Greek cities under Persian rule went to the Persian king Darius with an offer that he couldn't refuse. Great king of everything, give me men and ships to invade the Greek island of Naxos, and I will grow your empire and give you riches beyond your imagination. Go on then. After all, what could go wrong? The invasion was a disaster. And fearing his new position as the Marmite of a hate-fueled retribution sandwich, Aristagoras decided to light the fires of an Ionian rebellion against Persian rule. Mainland Greece couldn't have possibly been more different to Persia. Many different city-states existed independent of one another. Though they shared a language and strong bonds, each area was ruled separately, with huge cultural differences. They were disorganised, disloyal to anyone but themselves, and fought bloody wars between each other frequently to increase personal power in the region. But there was one thing they could always agree on. Greeks bowed to nobody, and should only ever be ruled by their own. So if a Persian threat came looming, they were more than ready to unite in a fight for freedom. When news reached mainland Greece that there was a rogue Persian tyrant rebelling in Asia Minor, promising to instate a democratic leadership in the region, Athenians listened. If there was one thing that Athenians went giddy for, it was democracy. Forces from Athens and Eritrea soon set sail to support their fellow Greeks. Unfortunately for them, the rebellion was a disaster. They had completely underestimated the global powerhouse that Persia had become, and were decimated in the first battle at Ephesus. Immediately regretting getting involved, the mainland Greeks fled, leaving the Ionians to deal with the mess they now faced. Weak and alone, it was only a matter of time before Ionia was back in Darius's grasp. By 493 BC, the revolt was over, but for Darius this was only the beginning. As you've already seen, he did not take kindly to the Athenian involvement in the plot, and he wasn't going to let them escape unpunished. He wanted revenge. He wanted blood. He was going to send an army to conquer all of mainland Greece. Darius appointed his son-in-law, Mardonius, as leader of this great Greek invasion. He was given a fleet, a fresh, fierce and well-disciplined army, and was dispatched into Thrace in 492 BC with just one goal: make the Greeks pay. The conquering force moved swiftly. Macedonia and Thrace bowed to the inevitable destruction and were absorbed into the seemingly endless might of the Persian Empire. Darius the Great was confident. Seeing how quickly Greek powers were bending to his will, it seemed certain the other Greek city-states would surrender to his rule. Ambassadors were sent to demand fealty in gifts of earth and water. In almost every case, Darius was right, and these terms were accepted, but two Greek cities would not bend the knee so easily. This was the final insult that Darius was prepared to swallow. He began to strengthen the invasion force, and in 490 BC, the order was finally given. 25,000 Persian soldiers set sail across the Aegean. Any city that stood in their path of destruction was doomed. They found Naxos abandoned. Any stragglers were murdered, and what was left of the city was completely destroyed. Knowing by now that the Persian army was coming for revenge, the people of Eritrea had no option. They retreated behind their high city walls and prepared for the coming siege. For 5 days the fighting was brutal, bloody and desperate, as Eritreans, isolated and alone, fought to save their city. On the 6th day, one final act of betrayal would be their undoing. The city was burnt to the ground. The great king's vengeance had finally caught up with Eritrea, and Persian control had spread across the entire Aegean. But the thirst for revenge remained, and their next target was Athens. At this point it seemed all hope was lost. Athens was outnumbered both on land and sea, and Greek forces had proven ineffective against the might of the Persian army time and time again. As they prepared to go and face their foe, all but accepting their inevitable defeat, a messenger was sent to Sparta with the final glimmer of hope. One runner was sent on a staggering journey of 140 miles to ask for Sparta's aid. But Athens didn't have 10 days. 10,000 soldiers marched from the city to meet the Persians in battle, with the goal of trapping the Persian army in the Bay of Marathon before they could take control of the passages that led to the rest of Greece. The Persian army outnumbered them by over 2 to 1. It boasted a strong cavalry and highly capable archers that would be able to pick off Greek soldiers before they even got close. But there was one advantage still held by the Athenian force. They had a very strong, defensible position. Both sides entered a standoff, the Greeks reluctant to attack such a superior force, and the Persians put off by the wall of glistening shields and spears, staring down at them from their high hill. For 8 days they stood, unable to break the stalemate. As more and more time passed, the Spartan Carne festival had been and gone, and by now the Spartan army would be marching to Athenian aid. As the sun set on another day at Marathon, there was a glimmer of hope spreading through the Greek camp that all was not yet lost. The Persian commanders were all too aware that the Spartan reinforcements were coming. They still had one overwhelming advantage despite their weaker position. They had the maneuverability of the Aegean Sea. In the dead of night, they had begun to board their ships, hoping to attack Athens by sea whilst the defending army was distracted. For the Greeks, it was now or never. When the sun rose on the battlefield, it glistened on the heavy bronze armour and wall of shields and spears that were descending down the hill into the Bay of Marathon. They stretched their line thin to match the length of the Persians, and, as soon as they got within range of the archers, broke into a run directly at the invaders. The two armies clashed. The fighting was bloody, fierce and brutal. Men were impaled on spears or crushed under the sheer weight of the advancing wall. Persian lines broke first at the flanks, and the rest were quickly enveloped in a bloody massacre. When the dust settled, it was a complete Athenian victory, with whatever soldiers left in the Persian force fleeing to their ships. The water ran red with blood, littered with the floating bodies of Persians attempting to escape. Against all odds, against all expectation, the Athenian army had done what no other Greek force before had done. Faced off against the might of the Persian Empire, and survived. But it was far from over. Even with the Persian invasion beaten at Marathon, they still held enough of a threat that an undefended Athens remained in danger. There was a huge risk that those left behind in the city would see Persian ships approaching and assume the worst, opening the city gates and accepting defeat. One man had to run the 26 miles from Marathon back to the city to make sure that the people knew of the victory. With the city secured, the remaining soldiers were able to rush back just in time to see the Persian fleet sailing away into the sunset. The war had been won, but any Greeks who thought that this would be the end of their troubles from the east would soon see how foolish they were. Even as the dead lay on the bay at Marathon, Darius was preparing an army greater than the world had ever seen before.